the arts program because at first I thought, well, I'll teach printmaking, and no, hardly any youth came to my workshop. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe if I teach graffiti, they'll come. And of course they came. I was working with all these young men of color, and we would do walls, big mural productions all throughout the Bay Area. And that really helped. Us develop an income generation model. And I published a book with Josh McPhee, which I brought here today, and it was about having a collection of black and white political graphics that different organizations around the country can use freely, right? That means that it's copyless, not copyright, copyless. We are allowing people to use reuse. Next. This is one of the murals that I did with my students. I did that for about 5 years. And I was always doing my art, but I always kind of try to find a way to do art in a way that was engaged. Right. Do art that was engaged, and then art that was about issues. So 2006 was a really kind of year that really changed everything for me. And that was the year that millions of immigrants went out into the streets, and they said, that's it, you know, we're tired of getting scapegoated. Now, you remember when I told you 1994, 2006, that's 12 years. So, you know, people think like, well, all these immigrants, that all of a sudden they came out, like, because of the bill at that time, which was called the Sensenbrenner bill, and they were probably mad and they came out in mass. But in reality, immigrants have been dealing with anti-immigrant legislation for 12 years. I mean, it's not like they got mad overnight. This was something that was brewing for years. And so for immigrants to take to the streets like they did was a big kind of wake-up call, because if any of you are from immigrant families, you will know that the predominant kind of way of thinking is like, oh, don't make noise, don't bring attention to you, assimilate, just try to be as American as you can be, and don't ruffle any feathers, right? Just be quiet. So for people to not be quiet meant that we were no longer afraid of kind of coming out. And it was interesting because my parents told me to go to the march, and my parents never went to any marches with me. You know, they were always like, yeah, you go to the advocacy thing. And when they told me about this, they knew about the marches, and that was just really interesting to me that they felt very compelled to go. My whole family, my aunts, my uncles, next. So I had been already running a web design firm for a few years, and I was doing art, and I was taking on all these national issues. But what was missing for me is that, as an artist, my art could only go so far, right? And I met some guys from an organization called MoveOn.org. MoveOn.org is like a national online organizing network. And that means that, you know, like if David is in New York, he'll get an email from someone in Oregon saying, hey David, did you hear that Target just gave money to like an anti-gay congressman? How about you and your friends send this guy an email, and let's make sure that we force Target to no longer fund them. And MoveOn can get 300,000 people to do that, right? So they're very organized. It's all based via email. It's called email organizing. And it's a fairly new model. It's like when you get an email that says, hey, sign this petition, right? There's some people who do it really, really well. And MoveOn's one of them. So I met them, and they're like, wait, why isn't there a Latino MoveOn? I mean, you guys are like, it's your time. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Why aren't we organizing? And so I found this, but I sent it.org. And what this was is that, okay, so we were marching, Latinos were marching, but, you know, a lot of those marches didn't get organized via email. They got organized via the radio. Okay, so a lot of us were not taking advantage of email. And so I was like, man, it would be so powerful if we can do email organizing for Latino issues on a national level, and that way, you know, the Latinos in New York support the Latinos in Cali and Arizona, and we can like really grow our political power. So next, one of the first campaigns we took on was supporting Sotomayor in her nomination, and as you remember, there was a lot of kind of anti-Sotomayor imagery in the media, right? It was actually, a lot of it was very racist, and so we decided, I made this poster, let's put out a poster that was about celebrating who she was, because people wanted something to put up in their offices, on their windows. And so I made this poster, and it got shared hundreds of thousands of times. And that's, I mean, it would be used in rallies and stuff like that. So I was like, wow, this is a whole nother way to share my art. You know what I mean? This is getting, like, shared virtually. Next. And our next campaign was around Lou Dobbs. And so Lou Dobbs, I don't know if you guys remember him from CNN. I mean, he's on Fox now. But on CNN, he would get there at 8 p.m. every night and say, these illegal immigrants, they're bringing leprosy, and they're bringing malaria, and they're criminals, and they're rapists, and, you know, and we need to, like, really, you know, we need to send them all to prison and deport them. It's really, like, hateful language. And so we ran a campaign against CNN for 2 months, and we forced CNN, we were basically saying, like, look, you have Colorado Brian. You're about to do Latinos in America. You have, like, Rick Sanchez. You know, this is when he was still on CNN. Why are you going to have this hateful guy when if you're about the Latino market, this guy is like, he's not going to cut it. Right. So after 2 or 3 months, he got fired. And that was thanks to our organizing that we did. We got 100,000 people to sign the petition. So CNN is no little enemy, okay? CNN is a multinational global corporation. So it really spoke to the power of when Latinos can organize, we can have an impact. And the reason we can have an impact, and it really comes down, unfortunately, it's not like they want to do something that is, you know, the right thing to do. It comes down to consumer dollars. Because we are such a growing consumer base, you can no longer get away with, you know, being an anti-Latino or even ignoring that we exist. You'll become obsolete in the next 10 years. So there's a big opportunity for all of us, you know, in everything, in the arts, in media, next, to really kind of take this on. But even through all this work, you know, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009 would happen. SB 1070 in Arizona. Okay, so things, it's like legalization is the Reagan program I told you about, right? When people say rape, they say, you know what, we're going to legalize 2 million people. But it was going towards criminalization. It's like things were just going backwards, and no matter, we could be fighting something in Florida, and you turn around, Arizona, Ohio, Illinois have really anti-immigrant laws. Next, so this is something we're facing now, which is how do we begin to kind of like really change the frame? Because if there's something that is very hard to argue, it's this, illegal aliens. What I mean by a frame is like, a frame is something that if someone tells you over and over and over again, you're going to believe it. And so, you remember during the 90s, I think, late 90s, they would say, welfare mothers, let's cut welfare. Welfare mothers are taking all the money. Who would they show when they were talking about welfare? Do you guys remember? They would show black women, and they would basically make it seem in your mind that it's only black welfare mothers, and they're taking resources. In reality, that wasn't the reality. That wasn't what was happening. It's just that the frame got so ingrained that people believed it, and it actually caused a lot of legislators to say, okay, we're going to cut welfare. It's the same thing with criminalizing youth, right? Like, in the last 10 years, there's been a big shift to say, like, you know what, those, like, thugs in the streets, they can kill you. Like, they're just drug dealers, they're good for nothing, they're mostly black and brown, let's lock them up, right? And so all of a sudden, all these laws around the country around trying kids at 16-year-olds, instead of 18-year-olds, there is a shift because the frame that got introduced is these men of color are juvenile delinquents. Lock them up. And guess who was funding that frame? The California Corporation of Prisons, right? Excuse me, the Corporation of Corrections, which is the biggest prison lobbyist. And of course they want to lock people up because they get paid. And so if they make tougher laws on youth, right? In California they made graffiti a felony. Okay? Like things like that. You know, and yet, have you guys heard the whole crack cocaine thing? If you get caught for crack, you serve a lot more time than you get caught for cocaine. Just like these racialized ways of looking at things. So it's the same thing with the word illegal. In reality, only immigrants get called illegal. Like when you have bankers rip off like, you know, millions of people in the United States, they don't get called illegal bankers. And when you have Madoff and you have Enron, you know, invest